Hello. Are we on Everyone's Raymond 360? Yes. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? We are telling people that we are live. Telling people that we are live. Hello, everybody. We will be visiting today with the great Andy Kindler. Hello, Leo. I will answer all questions. Hello, Gil. I have a completely different sound setup today, so hopefully everybody can hear me. Yes, great. Andy Kindler today. Andy Kindler and I were talking, and he's done 27 episodes, so perhaps more guest episodes than anybody else. Hello, Bobby. Yes, happy holidays. Happy holidays, everybody. Here comes Andy, I think. All right. Yes.
How did I? Hi. Hi there.
Hi, Andy.
Hello there, Tom. Am I doing more? There's more guest episodes coming up?
No. Andy, the show ended.
Phil Rosenthal. That's not what Phil Rosenthal told me. He told me I have a good chance to be Andy in the Latvian version of Everybody Loves Raymond.
So, Andy, funny. I'm acknowledging the funny right there. We last left off. First of all, the funny thing is, I said, "Can you come back in a few weeks?" And you said, "Sure." And I thought, "Okay, we'll do it." So I thought, I guess it's probably been 2 months now. I think it's been 7 months.
Mike, that is a sad. Why don't we just? I'm ready to die now. Seriously, Tom, you're younger. You can keep going on. But if 7 months goes like 5 minutes, I still haven't been out of my house. What's the point?
That's not true. You're still doing stand-up, Andy?
I'm not only doing stand-up. No, I'm not doing any stand-up. Why did I lie about that? No, I'm in my house.
Yes.
I'm going maybe out next year, but still, I keep pushing everything back. But I am available for cameos.
Nice. And when you say going out, you mean out on tour. Andy, your glasses are,
what happened?
yes, they're there.
Things are looking up. I just wrote that joke.
All right. So, Andy, the last time I knew what was going to happen is we got lost in a great conversation. And then all of a sudden I said, "It's time to go, Andy. So let's put a pin in a couple of these stories." Okay.
My audio low, Tom. They say is my audio still low? I mean,
you sound good. You sound
good on your end? Okay.
You sound very, very good.
Someone in England needs to turn up their schmagackle filter.
Here, I'll turn mine down a little. Maybe that'll even us out.
How do you have an adjustment? I don't have an adjustment.
Yeah, because I have a mixing board. I have all kinds of stuff. I had Rick Marotta yelling at me like, "What are you doing?" And so I have much more than I should.
A little edgy? Is he still a little edgy, Rick Marotta? A little
tricky.
Moody?
Tricky. All right, let's bring everyone. I'm saying hello to everybody because we are doing very inside baseball here. What we were talking about was Rick Marotta, who did the music for Everyone's Raymond, but also played drums on many, 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 many gigantic hits, and had played with everybody from Sinatra to John Lennon. Now, the reason I even go on that little tangent, Andy, is if you watched your first, talking to the audience, if you watched Andy's first appearance, he came out to LA to be a singer-songwriter, and he somehow...
Guitarist too.
Guitarist. So he somehow winds up on the Young Comedian special, which is not an easy thing to do. So I'm bringing this up...
Not at age 34.
So, Andy... Karen, sorry. Your comment. Your hair is looking great, Andy. Do you still cut it every 5 minutes?
That's right. If you don't like my haircut, wait 2 hours. Cut it again. Goodbye hair salons. Hello 7-week haircuts. Nice.
So, Andy, the Beatles special. Did you watch it?
So sad. This is a sad comment on me. No bigger Beatles fan in the world. I took LSD in college and saw Let It Be as part of a 5-hour Beatle thing, and I'm still debating: should I get the package Hulu with the other one? It's not Hulu. It's not even on Hulu. What is it on?
It was on Disney Plus, and here's why I ask. So I saw Ray and John Manfrotati, who played Johnny on Everett Raymond, and Rick Marotta, and they were all so inspired by watching it. And since you started as a songwriter, guitarist, you must see it.
Well, the thing is, I definitely will see it because I actually remember the entire. There's like a kind of a myth about the whole thing because the myth is that it was no one wasn't a great movie to begin with. It was the greatest movie I ever saw, but I was on LSD and I was at a 5-hour Beatle thing and they were playing Revolution. But to me, it was the only time I've ever seen people argue on film before that. People be real in the musical thing.
Yeah, and I think what you'll see, and for those of you watching, then we'll get off the Beatles topic, because the next time you visit, Andy, I'm hoping that you will have seen it.
7 months will allow me time.
What you're seeing is so much inside the creative process, and what I was going to ask you about is, I remember you would perform at the Montreal Comedy Festival, and you would comment about the state of the comedy industry, right? What was the specific thing? What was it called?
It was called State of the Industry. My manager, Bruce Smith, came up with the name as a takeoff on State of the Union.
Oh, nice. So just for those watching, and here's why I bring it up, Andy. I remember being at your house, and you had the exact Bic pen or Parker pens lined up that you needed to. And I bring it up, I'm not making fun of you, the creative process to get into that flow, because it's so daunting. And just to paint the picture for the audience, the Montreal Comedy Festival happens every year. It's everybody wants to be seen there and hopefully get a deal and maybe end up being in a show like Everett Raymond. So there's a lot riding on that. So Andy decides to do an entire coverage of the state of the industry. So it's a very dangerous move because you have to go in front of all these industry people, potentially burning some bridges, potentially getting huge laughs. But it's a very daunting thing, as opposed to, I'm going to be in Cincinnati this weekend and I'll kill, and if I don't kill.
Oh, wait, Tom. That's a lie right there. Oh, okay, you're going to cover up. If I don't kill, I'll make marvelous comments about it.
Well, I'm just saying.
I don't kill in Cincinnati is the point I was making.
Yes. Oh, I was there. So that creative process, though, for you, Andy, when did you feel that flow ever? Like, when do you feel that sense of I'm on a roll?
Oh, well, I felt it 4 times. Once when I started. No. Well, I can feel it when you're like really. I'm constantly going for that feeling on stage. I'm never happy unless I'm totally ecstatic on stage. And so the audience knows that, and I'm asking this guy why he's not laughing or they're not laughing. But it's that moment when you're like, there's the very first time I did comedy, I didn't get a laugh, and I said, oh, this isn't going well, and I never stopped that style. I just constantly, constant patter of, it's not just the stand-up, it's how I'm feeling about my stand-up and the particular joke.
Right. And so and what Andy's referring to, a little self-deprecating style of acknowledging. Now,
did I say that again? What an idiot I am. I've said that on every stupid show I've been on. I say it again. Oh, I'm going to get the book on procrastination tomorrow.
Now, Andy, I'm going to tell you, when I had a roommate who was a comedian, and when Ray and I did what ultimately we called like Rayifying the script, when we worked on the pilot of Everett Raymond that Phil had written, I was in a house in Palisades Park, New Jersey, 2 other comedians, one of whom you know, but we would watch Andy Kindler because there was a TV appearance, and we said there's these false premises. And I forget how we were because you're always searching to come up with material, but sometimes you're like, that's not. And I think the bit you did was, insulin. Who are these for?
Yeah.
So we were already thinking that we were, and you had already done that observation, which is like
chocolate. It was like sugar-free chocolate. There's a comic I met in Boise. He goes, "What's this thing I see in the supermarket? Sugar-free chocolate. What's that all about?" It's for people who have diabetes, sir. Very easily figured out.
We connected, yes. So, having said all of this, Andy, I want to bring you to a story that we left off on, and it's a great, embarrassing story. And fortunately, you're the center of it.
I know the story, but how can I ever forget it? It's right in my mind.
Okay, why don't we set the stage, because then I want to get to the ball and some of the other 27 episodes you were in. But let's set the stage for this specific story.
Okay, you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. There was a guy. He was I don't even.
David Lee.
David Lee. So he was directing the episode, and so somehow the discussion started into Wings, and people were. I didn't know they weren't making fun of Wings. I figured every time you bring up Wings, you have to make fun of it. So I say, there's one of those that show Wings. It's one of those shows everybody thinks they've seen, but they haven't seen it. You know, it's just like kind of in the background when you're at a park. And then the David Lee says, "Excuse me, I'm going to have to stop you now. I created that show." Oh.
Let me finish.
Let me finish. That's exactly the way. Did I actually say let me finish?
No, I'm adopting a joke. Yeah. Maybe you did, but I didn't.
He mistreated me the rest of the week. Of course, I perceived that he mistreated me the rest of the week. And there were several times when I felt like saying, "Why are you angry at me? I didn't write the horrible sitcom. You created it. Why are you're projecting?"
Yeah. Hold on. David Lee's on the line. He has a job offer for you. Just opened up, Andy.
Oh, you mean in Grandpa Theater? He's old. The joke there is he's old.
Yeah.
He's probably younger than me.
Yeah. So just to set also a little bit bigger picture, Wings was a show on the air for a long time. We were at craft services, and we're gathered around, and you're just making small talk. So Andy hears Wings, and I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Wings, but what Andy's saying, it's not like, oh, I heard The Sopranos mentioned. Oh, The Sopranos, that show. Let me tell you, that broke ground. So Wings was just, and Phil used to say this about Coach, it's like America's favorite old sock or something like that, where it was a show and people did enjoy it and some people enjoy it, but you're not going to see a lot of, and I've never seen an episode of Coach either, so it might be great, but so Andy chimes in without missing a beat. Well, they can't be praising Wings. So
I can't believe you remember everything about it.
Yes.
Great.
Well, because it's, I don't know about you, but I get flashbacks of bad things I've said, jokes that I've missed. In the middle of, like, I'll be cooking eggs and all of a sudden, like, oh, that was such a bad set moment. And remember, and fortunately that wasn't happening to me, but I was able to watch it. And David Lee's a very nice person. He was directing, it was the PMS episode called Bad Moon Rising. And we were at the craft services. So
and my work was still excellent. It didn't affect my work in the episode.
Right. And so he was directing that episode. So you're insulting the man's work, and now he has to direct you, and you have to spend a week with him, knowing that you have just trashed one of his shows. And, you know, I always say this, it's so hard to get anything on the air or anything done in Hollywood. So it's like I'm paying my mortgage. I have the show in the air. And then to have Andy just wheel up and go, right, let me just put you in your place right here. So
I just want to interrupt for 1 second saying that I've had things over my time I've been in the biz where, like, I had a friend who was working on a show I was slamming, and he was like, "Why are you slamming the show? I need the money." You know what I mean? It was like, I've gotten into this trouble all the time.
Well, you have to respect your integrity in that regard, because I think we should talk about this a little bit in Hollywood, which someone said this to me early on. I didn't know what they meant. You never get a no in Hollywood. you never get like real. Sorry, you're constantly getting no's. You're constantly getting rejected, but you never get like a real opinion about anything because people are always worried that they're going to wind up sitting across the desk from this person in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a weird. So to state,
I was sitting in front of them that day. I was right in front of them that exact day.
That's funny. Yes, you cut out the time. You cut out the 2 years. You're just like, here, let me insult you right now.
Right.
Yes, a lot of people defending Wings here, and I think we respect that.
These aren't hot wings. We're not talking about hot wings here.
Wings gave us Thomas Hayden Church, absolutely. Thomas Hayden Church was there.
Like an airport to me. It never looked.
I think it was Martha's Vineyard too. All right, Andy, let's talk about the ball episode, which I don't know if you know any of the backstory of the ball, but
I can hear it.
What's that?
I know what the episode was about, but I mean, are you going to give me some back?
I'll help you here.
Oh,
but
no, I remember the whole thing. I remember Mikkola. Is this the one where he gets the ball and he thinks it was Mickey Mantle signed it, and maybe Morley Safer's wrong?
Yes. And the big struggle on that show, Andy, was, and I'll hopefully Phil can talk before Christmas about it, was Phil has to convince Ray to kiss Peter Boyle on the head.
Oh. Yeah.
And that moment, because Ray, and we've talked about this last time, you're acting, but when you're coming from stand-up, you're used to doing, everything is real within reason. You're right. Very that way. Ray's very much that way. We talked about last time, Ray doesn't have he can't do anything false in person or on stage. So that's why both you and Ray did really well on Jonathan Katz's show, Dr. Katz, because you're just speaking from the heart as if you're in therapy. You're doing comedy bits, but it's really sincere, the person. So Ray was saying, I can't imagine, I would never kiss my father on the head. And Phil was like, okay, it is acting, and Phil and Ray don't know each other. The show is on the verge of getting canceled any minute. So it's not like, Ray, trust me, we have 7 Emmys. We're going forward. This is now one. We're only like 6 episodes in. And so Ray says, Phil convinced Ray, just try it once for me. But you don't have to. But if you feel it, do it. And of course, he does it, and the audience melts because it's such a sweet gesture,
right,
that Ray Romano would never do. And so do you remember any of that feeling of watching that moment in any way? And it's okay if you have no even recollection.
Oh, no, I have complete memory of that because I remember that it was. I mean, if you look at Ray Romano, you look at his acting today, I don't think he's a better actor than him. I think he's an amazing actor. He is himself, and to me, I mean, I always felt like with acting, the more you do, 99% of it is getting more comfortable. It's not some like secret sauce thing. Although the industry has told me I'm wrong about this, that there are certain skills that are involved that I'm not getting. So if you look at Raymond, there'd be no way you would have to be. It would be like he had made a deal with the devil if day one of Everybody Loves Raymond, he was the way he is now as an actor. It just would be impossible to do it because his whole life was spent doing stand-up, which is great for acting. But so I remember everything about that week because I remember everybody around the monitors. I don't think I knew it so much until the show night for some reason. Maybe it wasn't. I wasn't privy to the discussions about that.
Well, it was in flux. It was not decided. It was a fight that Phil and not a screaming match, but it was a debate that Phil and Ray were having. So it wasn't like, okay, on Monday we've decided that on Friday Ray will kiss Peter Boyle on the head. It took a little bit of finesse from Peter Boyle, and years later, Ray is going, I don't really drink coffee. And Phil's like, well, because there are calls for Ray to grab some coffee. And Phil goes, well, pretend it's coffee. How about that? And Ray, getting a laugh in the writer's room, he goes, I guess someday, eventually I'm going to have to act. So that was that's
a sign. See, to me, that's a sign, because I would say this because I'm also a stand-up actor. But it's like, I feel that's an advantage. As uncomfortable as that feels, it is way, way more organic and got Ray to where he is today, that he did struggle with those things, that he didn't run across the room and tongue kiss Peter, as he often did with me. And conservative gay humor still is funny. We like to make fun of our sexuality. We're uncomfortable with it, so we make fun.
That was a big close, Andy. I like that close. I cannot wait for you to watch the Beatles documentary.
Watch it. Please forgive me that I'm still debating on what package I should get.
Yeah. So now, Andy, let's go back, because we were talking about your stand-up. Andy knew Phil Rosenthal from going to this deli, which was almost like a New York deli. It was actually run by John Gotti as a mobster. His brother was Bill Gotti. He ran this place called Victor's. It's no longer there, so we don't have to worry about retaliation in any way. But you got cast on the show, and we didn't know, the show didn't know if it was going to come back again. So it was day to day, but you would hit home runs with your lines. And so what we talked about last time, it wasn't, it's only because Andy was hitting home runs that we were able to bring him back, that Phil said, yes, 27 times. And I know I wrote a lot of those episodes that you ended up being in a big way. And one of the things that Tom McGowan, who was just a guest on, said, I was the married friend, and Andy and Johnny were the single guys. And Ray loved the Seinfeld conversations. Right. In the diners, right? They're just meandering, and that wasn't really Phil's thing. So you provided that little bit of Ray, what Ray was looking for, which was the talking and Nemo's, et cetera, stuff like that. And so, right. Yeah. So now, but just
what you're saying is all new to me now. They just kept saying to me, "You're 1 second from being fired. Just watch your P's and Q's."
Well, I think Phil loved you and your acting, et cetera. So I think you were the go-to guy. And I know in a lot of I think, were you in the checkbook episode?
Yes, that was
okay.
I was so upset with him. How can you not do this? How can it not balance?
Okay.
It was not accurate with me, but it was accurate with the character.
Sure. And it was based on Ray's real life story of losing.
I love that story.
Yes.
Everyone knows that one, right?
We can go on. I try to let you talk the most on these things, since you are the guest. Sorry, Karen. What did Lily Rosenthal mean when we need to say "ooh, satay"?
I know what that means. Oh,
go ahead. Elaborate.
It would be sad if I couldn't remember the episodes I was in, but it was. What was the part? Was it like a wedding reunion? What was it, like a wedding party, or what were they all playing? What was the party?
They were playing. I can't remember. His
party. Oh,
yes.
Robert having a party, maybe when he was getting married or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, we were going over the menu, and we talked. And I said, at some point, someone suggested satay, and I said, "Ooh, satay." Also, my cube smell was another line that the people.
Yeah. So the episode, Karen, yes, renewing wedding vows, the 10th anniversary with Charles Durning and planning out that whole thing. That's what that was. The 10th anniversary, which I posted a picture up of you on there. Andy, when you go back, we were talking about in the past one, and I keep referring to it because I just watched it, and it was great. I got pulled in again by your interesting life story. We were talking, though, about pitching lines on the floor. And a lot of people, because people are such good actors, they're like, well, did he make that up? And especially with someone like you who can and is used to ad-libbing, whereas Peter Boyle didn't. Peter Boyle was brilliant, but he wasn't going to come out with 20 lines.
Right.
It wasn't
his style. Yeah.
It wasn't his skill set. It wasn't what, and who cares? That's a whole different animal. And we talked about it before that a lot of comedians can't act at all. Right. And so when did you feel like when did you feel that comfortable? Like, oh, you know what? I think I can do this. Even knowing everyone has self-doubt.
Right. Now, everyone knows that has self-doubt. I felt like I could always do it from the time I was a little kid, because that's one of the things as a little kid I would fantasize all the time. I'd be like, all day long, I would be like, here I am sipping a coffee in a movie. So I always fantasized that, but I never saw it like, from a young kid wanting to be an actor. So it was very, very, very difficult to transfer the same things that I would be doing in a club and being comfortable in a club with doing that to a stage. So it took me a long time, because the very first acting gig I got was on a show called Muddling. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Muddling Through was what it was called. It was a show that if it had been picked up, there would have been no Friends, because Jennifer Aniston was in this show and it didn't get picked up. And it was the first sitcom thing I had to do. And I had to walk across the set, put this cardboard thing I was holding to my side, and be on my mark. And I thought, oh my God, if everything's going to be like this, I'll never get this right. Because I always, my way of finding my spot is, and I don't know about you, I like to look down like this when I'm looking for my area. And then so, what are you doing? I go, oh, I dropped my keys.
So wait, did you work then? Did you did just the pilot, Muddling Through?
Right, and I also did an episode of Martin. So I think those were my two previous to Raymond. Maybe there were a couple of more. And
so then let me ask you, just out of general curiosity, you see Jennifer Aniston there. She's unknown actress number 7, right? She's just an actress in a pilot.
No, she was one of the leads. Oh yeah, she was one of the leads.
Right, but she's not a superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember thinking, oh, she's very good and the show could be very good, or are you just going, I really need to hit my mark and keep this job?
No, because this story goes on. It doesn't go on much, but it goes on. There was a rap party of some kind, and I was there hanging out with Jennifer Aniston, who couldn't have been sweeter. Just a sweet person, very nice to me. And so that's my memory. I was like, so years later, I was at the American Comedy Awards, and I noticed that I'm doing a lot of maneuvering to try and get in her eye line. Never worked.
You mean you didn't have that chance to go, Jennifer, I know you've been following my career, but how did you do after Muddling Through?
Oh, no, there was no question that there would have been awkward. Hi, my name's Andy. I don't know if you remember. And we did Muddling Through. And Stephanie Hodge, remember Stephanie Hodge? And a boop, 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 as Jennifer's. And I look up. I don't even realize, probably she would have been gone. I launched into that.
Or you would have been whisked away by security. That's, by the way, when Friends popped, did you go, oh wow? Because that was right around. Did you go? Oh, there's Jennifer Aniston, who I.
Yes, to my wife every night, and to anybody who would listen to me, I'd say that's Jennifer Aniston. Because my wife has made fun of me several times. I go, oh, because I did make a big, because I was so, that desperation when you're trying to get into someone's eye line at an event. She saw me there at the American Comedy Awards trying to get close to Jennifer, just to say hi. It's so ridiculous, because most people go, I'd never be one of these people who would make a fool out of myself. I am one of those people. But, I mean, I wouldn't have tried to bother her, but it still would have been annoying.
Well, it's funny because you're in the I've said this to Ray. I'm like, at what celebrity status can you approach this other person without feeling like, at what level do you have to be? Because, Ray did the Martin Scorsese vinyl, and Martin Scorsese had never heard of Ray Romano or Everybody Loves Raymond.
He's Italian, though. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's true. But, you just never know at what level you can do. So I think you did have at least a thing. I was in a pilot with you. It's funny because I saw, this is now we're in Hollywood. I saw Steve Carell buying bread at the local Ralph's. Ralph's is a supermarket here in Los Angeles.
Say the names again. Who?
Steve Carell. And
I just got spaced out for a second. Sorry.
So Steve Carell's there buying bread. It's like a Sunday morning at like 7 a.m. And I see him and I go, I could say hi to him. And, you only need a few sentences to get past and you're allowed to still be a fan, but I'm not a fan. You know what I'm trying to say. Like, I worked on Everest Raymond and whatever, at least let the guard down that I'm not, going, I've been following you for 6 weeks. You love this bread, don't you?
By car,
with my lights off. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing of the level of celebrity. I'm sure Jennifer Aniston would have been very happy had you said hello.
She would have remembered because it was absolutely a pilot that she was waiting on for it to be turned down to take Friends. So I don't think she would have not. And I think she would have been very nice. But how do I know? She seemed like, when I saw her at that party, she seemed very nice, and she seemed like we had a special rapport. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hear you.
Many years, you can't always tell.
Yeah. No, the exact sentence of every stalker. By the way, Lily Rosenthal has just joined. Lily.
Oh, Lily is in the house.
You missed, Lily, can you just say it one more time, Andy?
Satay. Ooh, satay. I can't even do it now the way it was. But I summoned my actual love for the dish, chicken satay. I love that dish.
Yes. By the way, I love these fans who are, yes, thank you. Ray was organized the wedding the wedding vows, etc. So also the sneeze. Yes, the sneeze, great. So Andy, you do that first episode. Then how many more episodes? I'm trying to think of season 1, right?
I played on the basketball team in season 1. I think my first episode was playing on the basketball team.
Right, and I posted a picture of that. You're standing next to me in on that team. Yes, you're leaning in and standing next to me in that team. And our last visit, what you were saying, which I think is kind of a bigger global thing of life, is you kind of wish you could appreciate at that moment even more what was going on and how great that environment was, because you also had the interruption of being on another show that wouldn't cut you loose.
Yes, that was a sad year. I was on a show. Everybody remembers it, and I'm sure everybody has ephemera from the show. It was Raising Dad. Actually, the show was written by Jonathan Katz, who I love. Is one of my big. He's one of my biggest fans. I'm one of his biggest fans. So he had written this show, but he wasn't in the show. Bob Saget played the lead of the show, and it was on the WB. And they said that I could only be on. They only allowed me to be on 2 Raymonds that year, and I could have been on more maybe.
Yeah, and what's the significance? I feel bad because Tom McGowan was on Frasier, and they said, "Yeah, do as many as you want. We'll work it out." And if he had not been able to, he was still on Frasier. And the significance for people watching, the shows that Andy didn't do on Everest Raymond are shows that he lost perpetual income for. Right. Whereas Raising Dad is not quite in syndication, nor will it ever be. And so did you appeal to the producers and say, what if they don't, or were they like, listen, you want to be on this show or not?
Well, here's what I was hoping. I was hoping that Ray would not Ray. I was hoping that Phil would call over there and have a one-on-one discussion with Jordan Levin, who was the head of the network. But I think Phil was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to help? But I don't know what would have happened then. It was really the holdup was the woman who was in charge of casting at the WB. It's just so ridiculous. We all could have gotten on the phone and saying, you're not going to be here 3 years from now. How could you walk? How could this do nothing but help? Are people going to see me on Raising Dad and go, oh, I can't watch him in another format now? I thought he was the teacher from Raising Dad.
Right.
But I don't think Phil. I think from Phil's side, he was like, maybe that's not a cool thing for people to call other shows or whatever. Maybe if Frasier was receptive to it, that's probably the big difference. The people of Frasier, it was a major. Also, it was also no, that's the same network, but they were big time. This was a new network where they were being very weird. It didn't make any sense.
Where did you film that show?
And Raising Dad. I want to say, it was on Warner Brothers.
So at the Raymond lot, at the same lot where Raymond was.
I think so, but I might be wrong about that because I've tried to. No. It's another one because I remember eating in the commissary with Bob Saget. So it's Paramount.
Okay, Paramount. Same thing as Frasier then. So the driving wouldn't have been so bad to go from Paramount to whatever. So I think just to shed some light on that, whenever Raymond got delayed for the finale, Phil wanted Mark Sweet to do the warm-up. And Mark Sweet was doing another show. So Phil did make that call. I know Ray made that call to the star of the show and said, listen, we've been on the air for 9 years, 210 episodes, and he's been there for pretty much every one. Is there any way that you could let him go for our big finale that will be filmed for a documentary that we've been building up for 9 years? And the guy said, like to help you out, but we really need him for our show.
Oh, my God.
Yes. So luckily, as fate would have it, Patricia Heaton lost her voice, and I think we ended up filming on a Sunday. And I want to ask you about that as well, because you were there with your wife, even though you weren't in the episode.
No, I wasn't in the episode, but I was invited.
And you were in the audience like Tom McGowan and Mike Scully and all these. And that was very odd because when I come across those photos to see cast members sitting there watching, I was like, oh, that must be an interesting perspective because you guys are watching a show for the first, you've never sat in a Raymond audience for an entire taping.
Right.
Before, right? So you're suddenly audience members. So just going back to that, I don't know if I don't know if it was that clear cut, even that it was like, they're not going to let Andy out. So we only got him for 2, if that was right at the beginning. And, you know, when you're the showrunner, when you're Phil, you're juggling so many different things. It's like this script, that script. Okay, well, Manfrotti's available. And so maybe, you know what I mean? So you don't know what that thought process was. And we can ask Phil. But for him to pick up and say, listen, let's cut to the chase. We're going to be around forever. This show is on the chop. You know, it's just a weird, conversation.
The way you're saying it now is I feel like he could have made the call, Tom. Tom, do you know how close I am to not having medical insurance? People think they say it's that 1 or 2 episodes more you could have done back in the day. And so I have a couple of conditions.
Oh, interesting.
No, but the other thing is, it's so weird because it's such a weird thing because if Ray Romano had not been, and this is like, I'm not saying this now to get anything in the future. Although I probably do think Ray could have me on in every movie as his younger brother or his Jewish friend who knows too much. But I was raging with envy and jealousy at that time in my life. You should have said, I could have said, if I was correct, I mean, not raging with it, but it was like, I was thrilled to be on the show. But if Raymond hadn't been one of the greatest people in the world, I think I would have felt more envy and more jealousy just because it's hard to sit in the final episode of a show that you're not in the final episode, even though you've been in plenty of them, Andy. Plenty of them. So I do remember all of these feelings.
That's awesome, though, because we talked about it last time about because you did a bunch of the Mark Maron's TV shows, right? The episodes of the TV shows. And what I had mentioned is I talked to Ray and I said, Ray, I listened to Mark Maron's podcast, which I think is awesome. And at that point, everybody didn't have a podcast. So it was
like a groundbreaking thing.
Right. And there were great interviews. And a lot of the interviews with comedians were talking about how they were filled with this jealousy over. And I remember just thinking, it seems very, very consuming. Now, when you, Andy Kindler, are sitting in the audience of the finale of Raymond, if you look to your left, there's Tom McGowan Tom McGowan did 17 episodes. He's literally one of Phil's closest, if not closest, acting friend. You did 10 more than Phil's, to put things in perspective. You did the most episodes of any outside cast member, and you have no history with Phil per se. So
and I feel bad now about wearing a T-shirt that had 27 on it and lording it in Tom McGowan's face.
Yeah.
I wasn't even that friendly with Phil. Tommy boy. Why would I call him Tommy boy? Because I like the movie Tommy.
You like the movie, yeah? You like the movie and all the cast members. All right, so Andy, the end of the season happens because you kind of were when we were saying about being comfortable acting, because even Mayor Filati would be like, okay, what am I doing here? Mayor Filati, who was great and knows Ray extremely well, so he's not worried like, oh, the star's going to want me off the set or something. You never know what they're looking for as the character per se early on. You know what I mean?
And you're as nervous. Look, I was like, I couldn't have been more nervous. Not horribly nervous. Again, stand-up helps you with all of these things, but I was very nervous about doing it,
Right, because you don't
do it.
Right. And so when now comes season 2, are you thinking, oh, they've asked me back, but have you been seeing Phil at Victor's and stuff and you're feeling a little more comfortable or no?
Well, sadly, I just kept going to Victor's every day thinking he would be there. And then also kind of just dropping by his house a lot. Hi, Phil. No, I think I felt like everybody felt, first of all, the whole show, I think everyone shared in the magical feeling of the show starting out when it started out and then getting to a great night. But also because we used to go to Pinot, Hollywood, and we would see the Frasier people there. So, yeah, I mean, I always felt thrilled that I was on the show and frightened that I wouldn't be on the show. Maybe, and not even because I have OCD, really. So it wouldn't even be because Phil wouldn't want me. It would be the studio blew up, the show business closed, So when I've had OCD my whole life. It was undiagnosed until I was 40 or something. But when I was in my 20s, I used to, and this is unbelievable because I don't know if I should say this. Ray doesn't care. Me and Ray have the same thing. Ray Romano and I both think that we may have, this is a true story. We may have hit someone in a car and we didn't know that we hit them. And we drove around the block to check on them. And Ray told me a story about he was driving. A woman looked at him. He thought that she looked at him weird. He drove around the block and said, I'm sorry, I was just looking at you, but not for any strange reasons. She was more freaked out. He drives around the block. And that's exactly what I had. I had the exact same OCD. And it was so when you have that which is basically based on, I've done something wrong in my life. I will be caught and put in jail. And even if I haven't done something wrong in my life, they're going to accuse me of it. So I was a generally nervous person.
Yeah. Not a comfortable place to be in a business where you do get fired for no reasons, right? You're not on the inside. And, Ray's wife came on last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't even remember, with Monica. And we were talking about Ray was on News Radio. And I think that job lasted 3 days. So
can you imagine how he must have, I mean, you probably explained it a little more, how he must have felt when that happened. I mean, I never really talked about it, but I think he was pretty much crushed, right?
So he called me that morning from LA. I was in New Jersey, and he called me and he said, they're going another way. And I was like, oh, because Anna swore when she was recounting it, because you have 3 kids. You're barely making ends meet. You're going to Hollywood. You're going to be in a show that's a hit show. All that means is what you said before, health insurance, and I can pay my mortgage. Like that's what they're coming from, not I'm going to sign autographs and be famous. And it lasted 3 days. And so that was that, the amount of insecurity you have normally. Then you added, this really did happen. Fired for I guess I can't act, and now my career's over. Back to New York. Who told you thought you could? Why would you think you could even be an actor in Hollywood?
Yeah, you want to shrink away in horror, but here's the thing. And had Ray Ray was more right for the part. He could have saved us from Joe Rogan. Think about that. We could have saved an $80 million listening audience of a guy who takes ivermectin.
By the way, and
Ray,
that far. Your use of the camera, of the closer you get, the funnier, right? You're really pitching forward.
Zooming. I don't even have a camera that has zoom. Why waste the money?
You're moving in and out. So then, Andy, because I'm just for the audience. Do you remember a specific episode where you just loved it because you're in the episode at first and you're like, okay, I don't want to get fired, and the risk of getting fired goes away basically by season 2, But was there an episode where you go, I'm just loving this episode? Like, I feel like this is my wheelhouse.
I think I really do for some reason. There's two. I could have said this. I could say the Sports Illustrated issue, but that was a difficult episode for me to do. Even though I loved doing it, but it was still maybe it was whatever. I was struggling with some parts of it. I think the Brajol thing was where the scene with the Brajol, where I just felt like I can't explain. I just felt completely like I. Not to the point where I don't even know that I'm acting and you'll have to wake me up. Oh, I'm in a reverie of some kind. But it was like I felt completely in the moment, which I often felt on Raymond once you got over the butterflies, because it's a multi-camera shoot. So I'm very used to being in front of an audience. So it could be like doing a show. You get nervous and then you couldn't be more relaxed.
Right. And by the time, yeah. So the Brajol episode, which was that Deborah Makes Something Good?
Yeah, so she's got me up by the thing. And I was even scared of this line because a lot of times I have a problem with lines that are. So the line was, "Oh, you made," right? So I always kind of would Rob Morrow, Fleischer, those type of things. Unloved exposure. But this time I actually did it as written. I always try to do it as written, but to commit to, "Oh, you made," and then it worked out good. And and then Raymond comes in, and it felt so great. I always go back to that particular memory. And the other thing, I guess my favorite moment, Wheel of Fortune, being pushed. The feeling of doing physical comedy when your whole life you've not fought against physical comedy, but I did, as you've seen Jim Brewer bring his cockatoo goat boy character back, I was always kind of against that kind of comedy. So to get a laugh and being pushed, it's so great.
That, by the way, that is so many hearts are going up, which is the sign of approval, of at least acknowledgement of your story. Yeah, and that was great. By the way, it comes across. I mean, you're killing it, and I have to just comment that Ray and I wrote something called Jealous Robert, which I think you were in also, the episode Jealous Robert.
Yep.
And we put in a thing of physical comedy where Ray gets elbowed in the groin. Okay, I'm telling this for the few people watching here who haven't seen that, and I remember a couple of people made comments like, "Oh, it's really like slapsticky, comedy." Now, I almost don't want to, because I'm afraid, knowing you, to bring up his name. But when before I even got in any way into comedy, I was sitting there listening to a radio show in my early 20s, and Tim Conway was being interviewed. And he was talking about getting into comedy like in Ohio or something and telling stories. I thought, I have to do it. Like, I can't not, I hate, Cut to years later, I'm writing on the Creative Arts Emmys with Tony DeSena, and I write a bit for Tim Conway where he's in the back row of the LA Live Theater, and then we cut to him, and he goes, "I'm either in the back row of the LA Live Theater or the front row of the Staples Center. I can't really tell," okay? Because he was so far away. And the venue, for those watching, the venue is enormous. And it's just not a good room for comedy. It's not a good room to perform, unless you're the Rolling Stones. Then it's a good venue. So afterwards, Tim wins an Emmy at that thing. And afterwards, we're walking, And I said, oh, because he did this. We pre-taped that thing I'm telling you about, and he did it phenomenal, like much, like Raymond, or even giving you lines. You're like, well, he's going to make it better than we wrote, right? And so I'll take all the credit in the writing, but the performance. And so Tim did that. So I said, Tim, great job. And I said, I mentioned Eros Raymond, and he said, oh, he goes, I saw an episode. And there's a moment when Ray gets elbowed and it is just perfectly executed. And I was like, I wrote that episode. So I didn't say to him, 30 years ago, I was sitting listening to an AM radio and you were talking, and I never would have thought that today, I would have been.
Well, he's the king too. I mean, the king of improv, and from the Carol Burnett show, just one of the funniest people in the world.
And so just going back to the statement you said about the physical thing, because you're being pushed and you're getting these huge laughs, right, in that physicality, which is not what you, let's say, lean towards in your comedy career. But where do you think that prejudice against that came from? Because I will even get you off the hook for a second. The true stand-ups would look down on prop acts and guitar acts and stuff like that. And maybe not appropriately so, but there's a pure spinning of words and pulling the audience.
The only reason why things like guitar acts and prop acts became hated was because of during the stand-up comedy boom, when there were too many stand-ups, and so people were doing just the worst kind of song parodies. But I was always someone like who felt, I never would, I would like a good ventriloquist act if it's a good act. It's just that generally there's certain things. There are not all the best acts get attracted to props. So, but I never ruled out that kind of a thing. I was always kind of open to it. But,
okay.
But not open to it. I was open to it in individual cases. So, like, when I first went on the road, I had my guitar with me. I would apologize to the people in the condo. Don't worry, I'm not going to bring it on stage, because it was just the cheesiest things that people would make song parodies on. But I love the Smothers Brothers. I love it when it's done well.
Yeah. So what you're saying, which just in case somebody is watching who is a guitar act, there is an unfair thing when you're doing stand up. As soon as someone takes out a guitar, it's like a different vibe instantly. So you can command the worst audience possible with a guitar when you start singing, and it just becomes, And
so you can imagine in the 80s, when there were more comics and ATMs, and if you could say, how you people doing, you can make $20,000 a year. Many people went that route.
Right.
It was easy.
Right. Yeah. And the comedy boom we talked about a while ago. In the in the last one, the comedy boom was a while ago. In the early days, George Carlin, prior, they were doing coffee shops. There was no such thing as, coffee shops. The improv, I think, started in 1964. There were nightclubs like the Playboy Club and stuff like that, and Mr. Kelly's. But there was no comedy circuit. So what Andy's talking about is from around 1980, maybe 6 to like 92 or something. It was every restaurant, every place had a comedy club. It didn't matter. It was, and so you had this influx where, and we touched on it last time, where there weren't that many people doing comedy. And now it's like, do you want to become an accountant or a comedian? Stable choices.
A lot of Seinfeld observational knockoffs. What's the deal with playing cards? Why do they call us salt? Who's the genius that came up with the word genius? Just like all that. And everybody sounded like that.
Yeah.
Like if Seinfeld hadn't had the show Seinfeld, he wouldn't be remembered. He was still a brilliant comic, but the breakthrough of the conversational stuff on Seinfeld wasn't like his act was. And his act, which was great, 1 million people copied it. And it was terrible.
Yeah. And by the way, the people who, and people copy, that's like, going back to the Beatles, that's like the Beatles sold a lot of guitars, but there weren't all of a sudden 20 groups equal to the Beatles. So, I have to say, I love people who are a good guitar act, or even props who know how to do it. Like it's a different, what you're saying is if there's a backdoor in, that was the way for a lot of that. So Andy, because we're out of time already again.
No.
Yes. Another episode, because a lot of quotes of your lines, sorry, I'm laughing at your lines that, yes, is there nudity? If there's nudity, I'm in.
I don't even remember that one.
What line, Teresa, what line is that from? Teresa in Chicago, who has, next time you perform in Chicago, Andy, her family has a great Italian restaurant where you'll have to.
Oh, I have to go there.
Yeah. Are you a Second City fan? Are you a comedy fan of Chicago's, the history of Chicago comedy?
Well,
because
sadly, when I went to Chicago, I love Chicago. I love Second City. Although I was never it wasn't my thing. But as anybody who would do improv with me, who couldn't get a word in edgewise, but I went to Chicago when it was during the middle of the comedy boom. So the clubs I played Zanies, which was not a lot of fun, and but I do love Chicago, and there's always and now there's great things in Chicago. There's always been great clubs, but they would be called alternative type clubs.
Okay. Yeah, and I think sorry, I'm reading through. That was in Jealous Robert, the line, which is sad that I wrote that with Ray, and I don't remember any of that.
I kind of remember that line a little bit.
Well, by the way, I've said it before. Tom McGowan, Tucker Cawley, everybody I've on it here, they're like, what was that? I don't remember that episode. You know, it's like I don't. And then they look. You know, like Tucker's like, oh, I didn't remember, and I wrote it. You know, it's you know, we're asking for a long time. Somebody Hates Raymond was a great episode. Yes, which I think I told you, and I'll text you. Somebody Hates Raymond was based on a real life story that happened to Steve Skrovan, who was a stand-up comedian, and he kind of went up against a bigger celebrity to do this part, and that celebrity didn't like Steve Skrovan all of a sudden. And then by the weirdest turn of events, that celebrity was in my house one day, 15 years later.
Does he know? Did they ever patch it up, or they know?
I don't think so. But in other words, patch it up. It's not like, oh, Tom and Andy know each other. Now Tom is trying to blackball Andy, and then we see this.
No, right.
This guy doesn't even know who he was. He just saw the name again and was like, well, he's not doing this because he, you know, did this. I can't speak in more ambiguous terms.
I got you.
But it wasn't that. So Andy, promise me that you will watch the Beatles documentary in the next 4 months, 5 months.
No, I'm going to watch it. It will be, yes. There's no way I'm not. Yes, I will.
Yeah, and, because it's pure joy. So Manfrotati said, I would have watched 60 hours of it. You know, like everybody I know who's in, because especially since you mentioned them at the beginning of our first interview, you mentioned being the guitar player, songwriter. I think you will leave there watching that inspired because.
Also, as a musician, I big as the Beatles, but very, very close, as everybody remembers, in the band Oasis.
By the way, the style for the people watching, the lean forward into the.
Did it, so we all came from the same school.
Yes, everyone should have rock hard abs from leaning forward
It's
to.
really important is get the. You can feel it. I can feel it right now. That's in my comedy workshop, and the motto of my comedy workshop is: if I can't make you funny, well, then maybe you're not.
Andy, people are asking, what are you doing now? And that's a, you know, is there not now? I know you're talking to me now. But is there anything that they can see you in at all other than reruns of Raymond and 20 other shows that you've done?
So excited. I didn't put it out this year. I put it out last year. It's called Hence the Humor. It's my first comedy album that I ever put out in 50 years. And I'm really proud of it. And even I laugh at it. So
nice.
it's a downloadable thing.
Nice.
The pandemic hit. I said, I don't want a physical copy of anything ever again.
Nice. So Andy Kindler, Hence the Humor.
And also I have my own podcast with J. Elvis Weinstein called Thought Spiral.
Thought Spiral.
Two
Great.
Jews, 2 microphones, 2 hours.
Great. Oh, somebody just wrote it. Thought Spiral. Okay, great. And that we can find anywhere. that you can listen to the. So Andy, we will. I am, and I appreciate you coming on. And I know that when people are, it's like you should have X, Y. It's like you're asking somebody to look presentable on a Sunday, break up their day. You look phenomenal, Andy. Clean shaven, respectable, and funny at the same time. So, but I will see you. I'm going to post some more. By the way, I keep finding pictures of you. Oh. One last surprise. Here we go, Andy. This is the ball. This is the ball episode. And these are, and the true fans have watched this and they know. I saved all of these episodes from the dumpster, and every wardrobe episode has a picture of every cast member. So in here, a young Andy Kindler should be here. Never before seen in public. This is November 13th, 1996. So 25 years ago.
Whoa.
That is a young.
Bigger than I think I was, or maybe I went through some weight changes on the show.
I think she was. I think they were on top of the sound stage when they shot that down at you. So there you go, Andy.
Sorry, ladies.
That is never before seen. And I forget, did you? Okay, that's the only photo of you. That's great. I will take a picture and put that online from the ball episode, and I'll show the rest to people next week, except for the Peter Boyle.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Andy, next time in a few months or whenever you take the call block off, and then all of a sudden like, oh, let's see if Tom is reaching out to me 4 times. Okay. But I really appreciate it, Andy, and you're always a fan favorite here. Lots of hearts. I will see you next time. Thank you so much.
So much.